Hi everyone, apologies. I kind of had a bit of a glitch with the old Wi-Fi. I just decided just to take you outside into the hut. So welcome, Sharon Herbert, Cognitive Hypnotherapy and Coaching. And today is promised just a quick few minutes on Mindset Monday. Now, as some of you may be aware, I was down at Regent's Uni on Saturday listening to the lovely Maria Sirius. Most of the day was based around positive psychology, mindset, meaning, pleasure, and that kind of stuff. It was quite deep, quite in depth, but very, very enlightening. And I just wanted to share some sort of quick wins that I got from the day, and hopefully something that you can at least begin to think about, not necessarily at the forefront of the mind, but just as a bit of an explanation as to how the mind works, how to start thinking along the lines of how positive psychology might be able to help you, especially if you're a bit of a pessimist or you've had a bit of a crunch in life and you only tend to see the negative and you're looking to change the way that you think. So very, very simply, we know that habits don't happen overnight. They certainly appear to happen overnight if we're looking to think about our bad habits. But in terms of changing those, 30 days minimum everyday practice, small wins. So if you take on too much, and it's a bit like saying, I'm going on a crash diet, paleo diet, I'm going to go to the gym and train for 4 hours every day and for 30 days, you'll fall off the end of the wagon because it's too much of a change. So we're talking about small changes in the things that you do on a day-to-day basis to try and change your mindset. And we know from the work around positive psychology that when we were put on this planet, certainly in the Ice Age, we were sat on the iceberg planning our next move to save our life. So essentially, we were always looking for the negatives, the threats. That was the way that we stayed alive. And evolutionary, again, that's the way that our brains evolved. And slowly that's had to change. Some people have been more inclined to be stuck in that place of only ever sort of catastrophizing and planning for the worst. And as we know, that's sometimes how kind of anxiety can manifest itself as well. So evolutionary, we know that we've had to change. And also if you think around living in caves, fight, flight, free, then we had to run away from that saber-toothed tiger, didn't we? And again, once that threat had gone away, then we'd almost have to recalibrate ourselves waiting for the next threat. So again, we were put on this planet, not necessarily with the tools that we need for today's lives, but certainly with the tools and the capacity to be able to react to the situation that we're in at the time. So there's a lot of science behind this stuff. And in terms of how we model our mindset, it's those little changes that we do regularly that help us. So the other day I spoke about sort of kindness and compassion. That's one way of doing it. The other way is just to think about, where's your meaning? So what is your meaning at the moment? And what do you do for pleasure? And when I talk about what do you do for pleasure, what do you get from your life now that lights your spark, keeps your candle burning, whatever you want to call it? And how do you incorporate that into positivity? So there are going to be times in life when, shit happens and you're not going to be happy. You know, you're going to be working with people that you don't necessarily always get along with or you don't always agree with. You might find challenges at home. Certainly as a parent, I know for sure that sometimes you do question your meaning, and to sometimes you might even grieve for the child that you thought you were going to have and the family network and the support you were going to have, and you know it was all going to be rosy, but actually it's not. And they're all the kinds of things that can really put a dampener on your mindset and push you towards that pessimism and negativity. So bringing yourself out of that is all around really identifying what gives you meaning. And these can change. They change over the years. Of course they do. And what brings you pleasure. So once you've identified those, then you can bring into the equation, what strengths have you already got? So what have you got in terms of not just your skills base, but also the type of person that you are? You know, are you somebody who's full of compassion, patience? Are you somebody who always exemplifies around being a sign of humility towards others? And using those and actually taking time out to review those, spot them, go out of your way to deliberately spot them. And that was one of the things that Maria spoke about. And the impact that that can have on changing your mindset. So once you've identified what gives you meaning, once you've identified what gives you pleasure, and as we know they can change, look at those strengths that you've already got and go out of your way to spot them. Spot the strengths in other people as well, and also when you're under duress. Pick it up and play around with this. Now, the other thing is, when there's moments of struggle and we're really struggling to see the good and we're really struggling to have the motivation to pick us up out of that dark black hole, then you might say, well, what good is this? It's around those small changes over a long period of time that will almost reset your brain to be looking for the positives rather than the negatives. As I say, during the Ice Age and in the caves, we were programmed ready for the next fight. We were programmed ready to make the next move for our own survival. And we've had to, over a period of many thousands and thousands of years, adjust ourselves to how life is now. And obviously it's still evolving. So you look at social media, you look at the pressure on our children at school, you look at things that, even a generation ago, our parents would have said, you don't know you've had it so good. It would never have happened like that in our world. In terms of consumerism and everything else, everything's ramped up. And I wouldn't necessarily argue that we've got it at our best, because there's so many additional pressures to behave a certain way, to think a certain way, to perform a certain way, to have certain things. And again, some of those things you can control, some of those things you can't control. So identify what gives you pleasure, and then where is your meaning? Where is it now? And then what can you do to thrive? Now, great little task, and again, I've done this before, so it wasn't new to me on Saturday. But if I read this out to you, so if your day were filled with just 3% more, and that's more pleasure or more meaning, what would you be doing? Or if you were to tag on the end, I would, what would you be doing? So just think about that. Hi Lindsay, I've just noticed you've joined me. Hiya. So just think about that. If your day were filled with just 3% more, and that's 3% more of pleasure or meaning, what would you be doing? And if you can just think about that every day, just for a millisecond, and just write it down for 30 days. The stuff that you're looking for is the stuff that's going to give you that pleasure and the stuff that's going to give you that meaning, and it's almost like that reward. Then eventually your mindset will just make that gentle shift just towards more positivity. So I'm going to leave you with that one. Anything, put it in the comments down below for me. I shall post the question in the comments afterwards as well, just to try and get you thinking. And I shall also put some references in there if you want to read up on some of this stuff, because it's really useful, it's really interesting. It's not all woo-woo, there's definitely some science behind it, and it's a phenomenal piece of work. So just think about that. What's your meaning? What derives pleasure? And then what are your strengths? And then how can you use those? Because we know that from a happiness point of view, the stuff that we thrive for in the future is the stuff that makes us happy now, and the stuff that we've got basically to look forward to. So if you can just make that shift in your own head, in the way that you think and the way that you feel, then you'll navigate this life in a just much more comfortable, relaxed way, being more content and more happy. So I've probably babbled on for a bit too long. Enjoy, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Thank you. Bye.